You don't need more information. And yet you will go to Google, to ChatGPT, to Instagram, to whatever platform, to TikTok, to wherever you want to go, and you will start researching, oh, I have this problem with my hormones. This is going on with my metabolism. I need to try this thing. I need to just, eat more grapefruit to help me really unlock my fat loss goals for this year. And you'll do that, and you'll convince yourself that that was the missing thing. But that begs a really important question that I gotta ask you. And that's the question of, if it was as simple as you needing more information, wouldn't you already have the results by now?
Let's link up with Krysta on The Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What's going on, Fix listeners? Welcome back to our latest episode of the Fix podcast. I'm your host, Krysta Huber, and it's just me, myself, and the lovely Bean for all of you watching on YouTube or on Spotify for today. It's been a hot minute since it was just us, since we just got a little up close, personal, intimate on the show. That is no fault other than the fact that I've had top-notch guests bringing the heat, amazing perspectives, great conversations over the course of the last 5 weeks. And I've wanted to make sure we get those episodes out to you guys. But we are getting pretty close to 200 episodes of the Fix podcast. And this show would not be the show that it is today without all of you listeners. So first and foremost, thank you for either being on this journey with me from day one. I will save all of my thank yous when we get to the actual episode 200. And so we'll be in. But I've realized in the last probably 12 to 18 months that the solo episodes are among my favorite types of podcast episodes to do with you guys. And what's funny about that realization is when I first started this show, I was so set on the fact that it would be 99.9% interviews because I really wanted it to be this full circle culmination of all of my skill sets, of everything I've studied over the years, especially having pursued a degree in journalism and thinking that I was going to be a broadcast journalist. And this is really my space where I sync all that together. So I always just had this natural inclination to think, oh, well, of course I'll do lots of interviews. And it wasn't actually until I just simply for sake of timing and coordinating schedules, being a busier person myself through various seasons. At one point, I think I first officially started solo episodes maybe in 2022. So I'd already been doing the episodes with other guests for a solid 2 years. At this point, we were 60 to nearly 100 episodes in, not quite, probably in the 50s range, where I had only interviewed guests. And I was just really afraid to bite the bullet on doing solos because I was I'm just so used to having somebody to ask questions to. If I turn my mic on, what if I feel like I'm rambling? What if I'm not sure if I know what I want to say? And like anything else in life, my friends, and you knew this was coming if you know me well, apparently Bean knows it's coming too and is in the corner whining about it. There's a nutrition analogy in here, and it's around consistency. And I talked about this actually when I hit episode 100, but it's also just around the fact that you're not going to be good at something until you just do it. And we forget that. It's so obvious. It makes me laugh to even say it out loud. It makes me laugh that I have to acknowledge it. But I think it's just a good reminder. It honestly is not what this episode is about today. But as I sat down, setting up my mic, setting up my camera, getting Bean settled, of course, having somebody come by the door and her immediately start barking, but we know that just keeps color in the show. I started thinking to myself, oh, I kind of miss doing my solo episodes. And I'm excited to sit down tonight as I'm recording this for you guys just a few days before we actually air to catch up with all of you and talk about a little bit of what I've been up to. It seems like the feedback on my hot takes episodes where I'm just reacting to different things I'm seeing on social media, different trends and whatnot, have been received really well by all of you so far at the start of the year. So yes, I promise more where that came from. And today I wouldn't quite call it that kind of episode, but I am picking on a trend. And by picking on, I don't mean I'm criticizing it in any capacity. I am calling out a trend that I actually use on a daily basis, something that is 100% swirling around social media. And for that reason is something that I think is important to talk about. And that is AI. And I wanted to do a little exercise. So I was kind of cooking some things up before I hit record for this, where I actually had a little bit of a conversation with ChatGPT. I went into both ChatGPT, Claude, the two main AI platforms that I use the most today. And I spent a few minutes asking it a couple of questions. Now, the point of the rest of this conversation is kind of like threefold, if I had to boil it down to 3 points. And the first is the elephant in the room that has to be addressed, because I've only had one other guest come on the show so far in the past few months and really talk about this. And that was in my episode not too long ago with my friend and fellow nutrition coach, Brian, where we talked about, where does AI kind of fit into the conversation with nutrition coaching? And I just want to say this. AI can never replace a nutrition coach. That is a good nutrition coach. And that is somebody who is truly a coach. That is somebody who is truly looking to build community. And the reason why I say that is because AI doesn't provide accountability. And it's the same equivalent as somebody right now today. And I'm sure there's somebody listening to the show who has recently done this, who will do this in the next few weeks as we lead up to the infamous unofficial start to summer that is Memorial Day weekend. It's the equivalent of going online and pulling up a calculator to figure out what your macros are and convincing yourself that that's all you need to be able to get started on your fat loss journey and begin a calorie deficit and lose those 8, 10, whatever amount of pounds you would like to lose, if not more. And you probably should have started back on it in January, if not a year ago, to feel good in your bathing suit or, just kind of tighten things up, if you will, and kickstart your journey that you have told yourself for the last 3 years you were going to kickstart, and finally stop kickstarting and just actually make a lifestyle. The reason why AI is the equivalent to these macro calculators and the reason why I bring up accountability is it's honestly really simple. It's the fact that when you think about what you need and what AI provides, what you need when it comes to fat loss, I'm going to tell you what you don't need. You don't need more information. And yet you will go to Google, to ChatGPT, to Instagram, to whatever platform, to TikTok, to wherever you want to go. And you will start researching, oh, I have this problem with my hormones. This is going on with my metabolism. I need to try this thing. I need to just, eat more grapefruit to help me really unlock my fat loss goals for this year. And you'll do that. And you'll convince yourself that that was the missing thing. But that begs a really important question that I got to ask you. And that's the question of, if it was as simple as you needing more information, wouldn't you already have the results by now? Because we live in a world where information is so insanely abundant to the point where it's actually probably too abundant, right, Bean? That it is somewhat of a distraction, a lot of contradiction, a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation that leads us to a place of questioning, oh, I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. And here's the thing. The right thing for you, and this is something I've harped on so many times on this podcast, so I will leave it at this and then move on. The right thing for you is the thing you're actually going to stick to. It's a thing that's going to help you cultivate consistency. And I just don't see a world in which a human being can replace that. I see a world in which I personally, and this is my take inside of the Fitness Fix, I personally see a world in which our nutrition coaching will get better and more refined because AI will allow us speed in supporting your ability to be consistent through supporting your accountability component of our program. So what I mean by that is we are not too far away from a scenario where we'll be able to plug in a lot more frequently asked questions, a lot more go-to things that we hear from clients on a Friday night, that when you ask us that question, if one of our coaches doesn't happen to be looking at their phone, you'll be able to pull up an answer really quickly. And you'll be able to simulate a conversation. Now, I can't say like specifically this exact thing is like coming to the Fitness Fix soon. So let me be super clear, but this is the future use case that I see. Simulating a conversation that will be programmed based on all of our programming principles, all of our protocols, all of our values that we teach inside of the Fitness Fix, all the scenarios that we see most common among clients. And what you'll get from that is you'll be able to have a conversation that is based off of those typical responses that we would give, because it's programmed with our methodology and our perspectives, and that'll allow you to troubleshoot problems even faster. I will say, for all of our clients who are listening, you guys know we absolutely pride ourselves on this inside of our program, but I do think we're pretty damn fast to respond. Truthfully, I don't know that you're going to find another fitness coach out there who prides themselves on being so open and available to you as a member of our community, who provides something that is there for you to meet you where you are, but pull you up to where you need to be. And just like, I truly like live and breathe that statement, in the sense that like, I know Friday night is when our girls are looking to have questions answered from us. I know Saturday mornings, maybe the mornings or Sundays too, when we're prepping for the week ahead, are like hey, like this and this happened last night, or this is going on the rest of this weekend. Can you help me navigate this situation? Those are my favorite coaching moments. But I also know that our job inside of the Fitness Fix to get you to a place where you are able to navigate these situations on your own is to eventually adopt a mentality of asking the question from our team and getting the response from our team enough times. Adopt this mentality of, what would Krysta do? What would Alyssa do? What would our community guide you on? And then that will ultimately show you that you do have the answers and you do have the skill set. And most importantly, it's always up to you. The answers, whether they are laid out for you or whether you're still searching for them, it still comes down to the fact that you are responsible for making the choice. I can't be in your kitchen telling you to meal prep. I can't be in your kitchen telling you exactly what to have for dinner. I can get pretty damn close by sending messages to our clients when they ask us the question of, hey, here are my macros left for the day. Here's what's in my fridge. What can I make work? You bet your butt I've answered that question many times. However, what I see as the future of like truly empowering all of our clients, and where I think AI will be extremely supportive, is just in compressing your timeline to get you the exact answers that you need more quickly. And then to have this interaction that we still have human to human to help with that accountability component, and ultimately getting you to a place where you're able to identify what's holding you back, and we're able to more quickly troubleshoot all of the solutions, so that point blank, we get you out of this state of being stuck in the problem, and we get you into this perspective where you are so focused and so oriented around the solution. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. Now, with that said, I wanted to keep the rest of this episode timely. And as we approach middle of March, nearly end of March, I feel like each month, as we say every single year, flies by quicker and quicker as we get closer and closer to the summer months. I know that something that most people are going to be thinking about right now in this audience is, what could I be doing in the next 5, 6, 7 weeks, knowing that Memorial Day is just around the corner? And yes, I have done a version of this episode multiple times over the last few years, but I wanted to do a version of this episode that relates to, how can I start preparing for summer? How can I start tightening up, et cetera, et cetera. But I wanted to incorporate some AI into this. So I thought it'd be fun to have a little conversation with ChatGPT, to ask it and to get a sense what information you could be consuming, you are consuming, and you are either choosing to follow or maybe not follow via other influencers, other fitness coaches, your own Google searches, maybe not from the most reputable sources, as it relates to this idea of getting ready, kind of squeezing whatever juice you can left out of this lemon, out of this timeline that we have, that's just, frankly, a really short window until we get to Memorial Day. Now, one thing I like to keep in consideration for all of our clients, this time of year, pretty much more than 80% of the Fitness Fix community is in a calorie deficit, but that does not come without a process that we like to refer to as really priming your body for fat loss, and really you earning it. And the reason why I use the word earning it is because it's so funny how everybody likes to put these calorie deficits up as like on this pedestal and basically make it into the situation of like, let me get to the deficit. And the reality is like, that's the part you should want to get in and out of as quickly as possible. Because when we think about what's truly required to keep our body in a calorie deficit, if you rush it in particular, you're putting yourself in a position where the outcome will always be less food, less food, less food, because that's what a calorie deficit, like objectively and based on like the textbook definition, that's what it is. So the approach that we take inside of the Fitness Fix is let's figure out what your minimum effective dose is. Let's figure out what is the maximum amount of food you can continue to consume and get the results that you desire. Why is this important? This is important because as we head into these summer months, I want you to ask yourself, take 2 seconds, take the inventory right now. How often do you tell yourself going into summer, okay, I'm going to tighten up for these few weeks, and let me give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you do it? What happens by the time you get to 4th of July? You've now been to multiple parties, barbecues. You've had your fair share of hot dogs, burgers, the parties in the summer sunshine. I know there's so many memes that kind of come out around this time of year that basically say like, the minute that daylight savings comes through, you're like out on a patio wanting to drink and enjoy a glass of wine just because the sun sets by 6, 7 p.m., right? The minute the temperatures increase, you're like, oh, being outside on a patio for a happy hour could fix me. I've heard all the things. I've thought these things myself. And while, yes, I want every single one of our clients and all of our clients know this, I want everyone to have the capacity to be able to enjoy themselves through the summer. The capacity to do so requires you learning how to intentionally consume more food. And that doesn't mean that I'm telling you that like I can promise that if you eat more, you're going to lose weight. All I'm actually telling you is in this intention to eat more, what we're really talking about is teaching you to actually build self-awareness, teaching you to actually come up with a plan where you figure out just how much just how much food your body can handle so that you put yourself in a position that when you want to have a little bit more, just how much is a little bit more, what is going to be that tipping point of where I'm not going to be happy with the outcome, of where I am sliding down a slippery slope if I keep saying yes to the glasses of rosé, the margaritas, the wine, the happy hours, the backyard barbecues every single weekend for the summer. There is, just objectively speaking, a way to do that to where if you want to say yes to all those things, we have to be calculated and we have to think about what other pieces of our routine, down to how much we're walking, down to what our training schedules look like, down to what our sleep looks like, down to how much water we're consuming, every other aspect. What does our Monday through Thursday look like if we're keeping these plans to the weekends? All of our Fitness Fix clients know that when we think about a holistic approach inside of our community, we're really trying to help you do that to just essentially be able to work backwards, to just essentially be able to say, okay, what are all the things, the events, the situations that in your past have put you in a headspace of thinking, if I do X, like all of the, summer drink examples I just provided, then I am going to gain weight. And we want to reverse that mindset for you by showing you, hey, we're going to teach you how to do that thing, that X, the drinks, whatever it is that you want to be doing for your summer activities, the travel, the concerts, etc. What has to be considered around that to make that happen, to literally reverse engineer that. Now, this is where things get exciting when it comes to AI. Over the last month, I started introducing more AI tools and techniques to our Fitness Fix clients by showing them how you can actually give these platforms your exact macros when you know them, because you got them from coaches like us who actually know how to help you set them up in a way that works for you, to come up with new recipe ideas, to help you change things up, to be able to basically come up with like pattern solutions. And what I mean by that is this. Let's say this is an example I've given our clients. Let's say you have been like really consistent with your breakfasts for the last 6 months and you've been eating like tons of eggs and you're just kind of tired of it. But objectively speaking, that's a specific combination of eggs and egg whites is what gets you at least 35 grams of protein. And you recognize how important that is to start your day off that way. Something that AI can do much faster, and something that I am a complete open book to say, I too will use this software so that I can come up with 10 plus ideas for my clients instead of 2, is you can tell it, I need 35 grams of protein and I need 5 high protein breakfasts that include X amount of protein, carbohydrates, fat. You can be as specific as you want, but do not include the use of eggs. I have probably gotten this question over 100 times. if not way more. That is a very low number, a low estimation in my coaching career. And I could come up with like 3 or 4 examples, like whether that's a protein shake, maybe some sort of like protein mixed into an overnight oats recipe. We could come up with different protein bars that we could consume. We can say, hey, there's no rules. If you want to have chicken for breakfast, you can have chicken for breakfast. And I got ideas. But what I cannot do as quickly as a computer, because just I wish I had that brain power, but I don't, is literally in seconds compute 10 plus different recipes with the exact portion sizes needed, to the point where I can then hand it to one of our clients who doesn't have to fumble around in MyFitnessPal, which is a very helpful step and, compression of the timeline here from the task that she needs to complete when she's already a busy person trying to manage her household, get her kids out the door for school in the morning, get to her first meeting of the day, and then rinse and repeat through that same schedule Monday through Friday, right? Why not be able to arm that individual with as many different ideas, as many different recipes as possible, and show her that we can also come up with it within 30 seconds. So I'm an open book in the sense that I'm simply integrating these tools and these tricks into our coaching and then passing it off to our clients to say, hey, let me show you how to do this too. I've literally pulled up ChatGPT on our coaching calls to show clients, this is what this looks like. This is how you can get with this specific with this platform, and then providing them different prompts. And this is something that will be ongoing. So for all of you out there who are like, yeah, Krysta's shown us a couple of prompts, I want to see some more. All of our clients, I got you guys, and we have some more great things in that department coming your way. But I say all that to say, it's great. And it's not something to shy away from in that regard. But again, we want to recognize there's this limitation in the sense that that software is not going to ask you the next morning after a Friday night out, hey, Jane, did you stick to the plan last night? And it could ask you that. This is where I think we are on the cusp of integrating different like automated messaging systems into our coaching platforms. And I know that's coming very soon, that if I have a client tell me, hey, I'm going out on Friday night, I am very certain that we are not that far away from a reality in which there is some kind of like automated feature that can go off, that can read the client's message being sent to us, that then kicks back a response to just start the conversation the next morning and actually read through what this client is saying to help with that accountability piece. But here's the thing. You're a human. I'm a human. If you know on the back end that is always AI, I guarantee you will put yourself in a vulnerable state to where you might start to tell yourself a story. Oh, because that's AI, because that's not an actual coach, I don't really need to worry about whether I had the extra plate of fries, and even though I intended to have veggies as a side last night with my burger. It'll be really easy to start to tell yourself that story. So there's a word of caution here in the sense that like, yeah, there's a future in which a lot of these things will continue to become quicker. And I think it's not even a future, it's a current reality. And it's just about how we look to use it. I mean, to give even yet another example, I'm teaching my marketing clients exactly how to do this inside of our content coaching programs, where I'm showing them, here's how to create more patterns, more rinse and repeatable pieces of content that's easier to understand, that's easier to digest, and really speaks to your ideal client. Like, this can show up in so many different ways. And I know there are people out there who are like, this is scary. I'm concerned about how this might replace jobs. And again, Brian said it best in the episode that he and I did together, where he just said, like, it's going to come down to separating the really great coaches from the ones who are trying to game the system and just play a volume game with this and truthfully be lazy about it. Because you can have all the automations and all these features in place that you want, but at the end of the day, there is an emotional aspect to food. There's an emotional component to a woman wanting to show up, to raise her hand, to say, I need help, to get out of that victimhood, to get out of that mentality that says, I think this is too hard. The mentality that says, I don't have time for this, and says, I'm finding the time, I'm creating the time because I value myself. And more importantly, because I know that when I take care of me, it is not selfish. It is an act of self-love that will allow me to show up better for everyone around me. That is not something that I am convinced a computer can empathize with in the same way that a coach, like our coaching staff inside of the Fitness Fix, because everything I just said is genuinely our mantra and genuinely the values and principles that we operate on, that I have no concern about the way that AI could interfere with that. If anything, like I said, it's only going to enhance pieces of the process that are better served with patterns and speed. And I'm really excited about that. Now, here's where this all comes down to this timeliness conversation. I decided that with this question in mind, with this fear that's kind of lingering out there for some people of, oh my gosh, could AI potentially replace my, services as a coach? Well, I decided to ask ChatGPT. Now, keep in mind, distinction of why I asked ChatGPT this question as opposed to Claude. For my AI deep divers out there, my other coaches that are listening to this, especially those of you who I've worked with inside of the Content Catalyst, Claude is my preferred platform. But the reason why I use ChatGPT to ask this question is because ChatGPT, of all the different options out there for a little quick edification on AI software, is the best when it comes to actually scrubbing the internet for other sources. Whereas you could think of Claude almost like a closed loop, where it is getting updated with information on the internet, but it's not in as real time per se as something like ChatGPT. So whatever has been programmed into it as of the last few months, I don't know what kind of timer it's set on, that's the only information it's pulling from. So the reason why I'm almost saying it's like a closed loop is because ChatGPT is pulling down information from the internet as it stands right now today with a little bit more speed than something like Claude can. So the question that I asked was very specific to this idea of what are other fitness coaches saying? What are other things that are circulating on the internet? And now keep in mind, garbage in, garbage out. Just like any other software, any other toolkit that you can use, if you do not ask good questions to these platforms, you will not get good, thorough responses. Something a lot of my coaches out there are seeing is that they're not getting responses that actually sound like something they would say or even something that they believe in, but we've taught them solutions on how to actually change that and how to program it and how to fill and input these correct prompts. So when I did this for the sake of this podcast episode, I wasn't so worried about that, because I was simply asking a question of what's kind of the conversation on the internet right now? And given that we are so close to summer, given that this is a time that I know people's typical behavior is to start Googling things like, how can I tighten up in the next 6 weeks for summer? I'm like, let me go to ChatGPT. But instead of asking the question of how can I tighten up, I asked it a different question. I asked it, what are the top 3 pieces of advice that nutrition and fitness coaches are providing on social media, specifically on Instagram today, based on the fact that if somebody came to them and said, I only have 6 weeks to get ready for summer, what should I do? What should I focus on? And that was the question that I asked it. And here's what's so cool. I'm going to literally read you the responses that I got, but I'm also going to share the rest of the conversation because I kept going with this because I really wanted to see where this would go the more I prompted it with a few other questions. So here's what it said. As Memorial Day approaches in 8 weeks, nutrition coaches on Instagram are sharing effective strategies to help individuals lose weight and tone up. Here are the top 3 pieces of advice that all of them are emphasizing. Now, here's what's amazing. Every single response that came through for these top 3 choices are all of the basics. There were no fad diets on this list. There was no mention of anything around GLP-1s, different medications. I'm not throwing shade to them. I've supported clients who have been actively on them, but they know my position is you got to focus on your habits too. There were no conversations about doing anything extreme with a calorie deficit. It did bring up calorie deficit, but here's what I love about this. To me, and I went and actually dove into this question further, so I'll share that as a follow-up. It means that the majority, and I can't say this with 100% certainty because yes, social media has its fair share of problems. And I shared this back in January when I talked about the issues around polarizing aspect of social media and the fact that for people to stand out, they feel this need to only speak in extremes. Hear me when I say that's not going away anytime soon. And I think it will always persist unless the Instagram algorithms and TikTok algorithms and et cetera actually changed. And I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But my takeaway from what I'm about to say, and all of you out there are going to smile if you know the philosophies that we have inside of the Fitness Fix, is this proves to me that the bulk of the information that you could consume right now today going on social media is actually sound in the sense that none of it's extreme. None of it's telling you to go on a crazy diet. None of it's telling you that it's too late. It's all helping you focus on habits. And I shouldn't say all, I know I'm speaking in absolutes. I should say that according to what I asked in ChatGPT, and yes, there probably is a better way, a more quote unquote less biased, even though that's almost virtually impossible, way for me to have worded this question. I did specifically use the word nutrition coach. So I'm sure that swayed the answers to provide answers that were similar to the type of advice that I would give. But I think you could walk away with this argument. If you focus on following nutrition coaches and you were to boil it down to what are these three main pieces of advice, you can sift through the noise, you can sift through all the bullshit out there, and you will find that the good chunk of coaches, and I should emphasize the word good, because in my eyes, ideally, it's the coaches who know what they're talking about, the coaches who are getting people real results. And ideally, those are then the coaches that are getting more of that notoriety on social media. We all know it doesn't work that way all the time. I've had my fair share of situations where I'm like, why didn't this post get more likes? When I know it was helpful, when I know it has good insight, when I know it shares real results, et cetera, et cetera. But here are the strategies that, according to ChatGPT, a lot of nutrition coaches, the most popular pieces of advice that people are emphasizing, knowing that we're just 7-8 weeks away from Memorial Day. First, incorporate regular walking into your routine. Walking is highlighted as a simple and accessible form of exercise that aids in weight loss and an overall health improvement. Regular walking helps burn calories, reduce belly fat, and preserve lean muscle mass, which is essential for maintaining a healthy metabolism. Health experts recommend aiming for at least 150 minutes of walking per week to achieve significant health benefits. 2 thumbs up to that. Nothing wrong about that. Agree. Second, engage in strength training twice a week. Listen, people, I also love the fact that ChatGPT just set a very, very realistic goal for strength training, no matter how busy you are. Because twice a week means that if you have a crazy demanding job and it's not happening Monday through Friday, you can make it happen Saturday and Sunday every single week. Or maybe the inverse, you have a whole lot going on with your kids on the weekends. You can sneak in 2 workouts. Maybe one of them is only 30 minutes and that's a-okay. They can both be only 30 minutes. Now, ChatGPT goes on to say how strength training is crucial for building muscle. Muscle increases the more you have it, resting metabolic rate, and that supports fat loss. Incorporating exercises like push-ups, squats, planks twice a week can significantly enhance fitness levels and contribute to a toned appearance. Personal trainers suggest that combining strength training with cardiovascular exercises yields optimal results for weight loss and muscle toning. Love the examples. Very simple exercises, nothing fancy, nothing complex about it. All things you can even do body weight in your kitchen, in your garage, in the middle of your living room, in between, when you're watching your Netflix shows, every time they say a certain word or a certain scene pops back up, you could do 5 squats. Like, you genuinely can integrate that into your routine. So I love the fact that it's digestible, it's bite-sizable, it's something that's super realistic and aligns with the fitness finks mentality of meeting you where you are. And third, of course, another favorite, prioritize protein intake and maintain a calorie deficit. So like I said, the conversation around a calorie deficit came up. What this does not do, because of my argument just a few moments ago of calories, of, thinking about this like garbage in, garbage out, right? I almost just said calories in, calories out because I'm in my nutrition brain, but garbage in, garbage out. I'm sure I could have prodded this a little bit more to say, or is there a common emphasis on something like a 1,200 calorie diet? And maybe I could have found a yes to that. I don't know. But it goes on to explain that consuming adequate protein supports muscle repair and growth, aids in satiety, keeping you full, and can boost metabolism. Nutrition experts advise focusing on protein-rich foods, yes, at each meal to help build and repair muscles, keep you full for a longer amount of time, and support weight loss efforts. Additionally, creating a moderate, so it doesn't really say too much about like the exact amount, caloric deficit, where you consume fewer calories than you burn, is essential for weight loss. However, I like this. It's important to avoid extreme calorie restriction as it can hinder metabolism and overall health. Not too shabby. So I had this good 20 plus minute setup for all of this because, again, this is all really sound advice. So what I almost want to start to say to everybody is, if you're confused, maybe go to ChatGPT and start thinking about asking certain questions. And if you want to know what those questions, the best questions are, the best prompts are to use, slide into my DMs. Literally happy to give them to you. Happy to have a conversation about it. But know this, there is an exciting element of the fact that While I don't believe this is going to replace a nutrition coach, because guess what? It just told you to do these 3 things. Now you got to go out and do them, right? And the accountability piece that I spent so long at the beginning of this episode talking about is still extremely, if not more relevant, because we don't have a lack of information problem. But I do think there's a role in which AI can be helpful in providing better clarity and better like sound, and also just like easier to follow short answers. You can even ask it, like, explain this to me like I'm in 5th grade, if you really want to get into the science and understand it in a way that's very digestible. I think that's incredible. I also think this will be a good way to sift out the noise, because I think all of these pieces of advice are very sound. Now, again, I haven't spent enough time, and I've played around with these platforms extensively, but there are not enough hours in the day. It'll take me years to continue to figure out what's the best prompt for this and that and the other thing. But I'm sure there's some inherent bias in the fact that I did insert the word nutrition coach, but I'm sure similar responses would come up for nutritionist, dietitian, personal trainer. So this is where I started to have a little bit of fun, and I'm going to bring the episode home by telling you the rest of the conversation I had with ChatGPT, because you, the listener out there, and I, the now with 10 plus years experience in the fitness industry coach, know that for as much as we're like, yeah, all those things are really great pieces of advice, we can go on Instagram right now and find some crazy, ridiculous argument for something that completely contradicts us, like saying that you shouldn't have as much protein. So I said to ChatGPT, wow, like I'm pretty impressed by these answers, because I think they're all really straightforward. I was like, these ideas are really logical. So I'm going to ask it another question. Why do you think people still continue to participate in so many diets and extremes then? And it said, great question. Even though strategies like consistent walking, strength training, and balanced nutrition are logical and sustainable, many people still fall for fad diets and extreme measures for the following reasons. And then it listed the quick fix mentality, social pressures, body image expectations, lack of education and misinformation. Just kind of expanding on that one, saying that a lot of people still struggle with understanding basic nutrition because the fad diets out there, like, know this. I didn't ask ChatGPT to tell me about the advertisements that are on all of these sites, the advertisements that are on social media, the stupid supplements that get thrown in your guys' faces, making you think it's some like magic pill. Those are still there. I didn't ask it to tell me what nutrition advice was coming from that. So I recognize that's a other big, like, kind of like cloud over my optimism in this conversation. But people are still believing, ChatGPT says this, someone still believes that cutting carbs or only drinking smoothies for a week can lead to lasting results. The overwhelming amount of contradictory information online can make it harder for people to distinguish between what's backed by science and what's just hype. So again, if ChatGPT is even noticing that, yes, I asked it a specific question that was kind of like urging it to explain that to me. What I do think is very promising is the fact that, like, this is probably a better mode of a search engine. But let's be real. We all know that the same way there is pay for play on Google with getting certain search results to show up a little bit higher, there are also means to do that. And all of those sorts of things are coming for these platforms too. But it's knowing what types of questions to ask and asking yourself, like, from what perspective do I want this answer? If there's somebody out there that, like, you respect as being like a really well-known professional in the space, like, if you listen to my podcast every week, I would hope that you assume I'm a pretty respected person in your mind. You can literally type into these platforms, what are the top 3 pieces of advice that Krysta Huber would give you when it comes to nutrition? And what's amazing is by having a show like this one, it's even going to integrate and pull on ideas that I have talked about inside of now almost 200 plus podcast episodes. So I have a lot of my opinion and a lot of information online that I would also be pretty confident that whatever it pulls for you is very consistent with what I do actually say, because it's just like repeated and there's a lot of sources and, again, repeated places to pull that from, where I'm talking about the same ideas consistently and have been doing so for a few years. You can kind of ask it to synthesize, like, looking at information from somebody like me, and then maybe it's someone else who has a really big podcast, and, other people that you really respect in this space. Ask it to combine a list of like the top 5 to 10 pieces of advice or like action steps that you should be taking based on the perspectives of Krysta Huber, insert anybody else that you like to include on that list. And I think that's really amazing and an awesome way to be able to use this. some of the other things that ChatGPT kind of explains, and like this is one of the last ones I really wanted to highlight, is, emotional or psychological factors. And that's the fact that people will turn to extreme diets as a form of control when you feel stressed or sometimes anxious or just dissatisfied with your body. Fad diets can give a sense of structure and discipline, even if it's temporary. The idea of a fresh start with a quote unquote new diet can feel motivating, even if it's not sustainable in the long run. And to that, I also say, separate from what ChatGPT responded to me with, I also think the inverse is true, is that because dieting is an emotional aspect, there's also the modes that we fall into where we're not dieting and have that emotional relationship with food that can turn into binging and things like that, and turning to food for emotional support that is putting you in a position of feeling like you're needing to be on this fat loss journey anyway. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. And the last one, marketing and influence from celebrities / influencers. So that right there tells me that ChatGPT has an understanding that there's a distinction between nutrition coaches and influencers. And I'm really glad that ChatGPT looks at it that way, because I could do a whole nother podcast episode for another hour about how frustrating it can be when I see people that I don't think should be speaking about diets other than them saying that it works for them and it's coming from their own personal experience. That is testimony, but that doesn't make you qualified. There's a difference between being qualified from lived, not just lived experience, but also certifications, and also then passing that knowledge on to others, showing that you can get these results for others. And those results can actually be maintained for more than 6 months, for more than a year, for more than 2 and beyond. All of those things are important. So I'm going to, again, see this through the glass half full, through the rose-colored glasses perspective, and hope that this really means that like there is this distinction here. And what ChatGPT says is that celebrities and influencers often promote the latest diet trends or extreme workouts that promise fast results. Many people trust these figures because they seem relatable, which is ironic because none of them are relatable in any kind of way. And I think if each of you out there was really true with yourselves, a lot of the times I'm getting good feedback on being relatable because I'm nothing like some of those other influencers or celebrities out there. I'm actually living my real life. This influence can cause people to overlook the potential health risks associated with such diets in favor of achieving a similar physique. And not to mention, if you didn't really look a whole lot like that person in the first place genetically, it's also not the fairest comparison to expect that you can then go look like them just by following what they're eating, because you also don't know how they manage stress. You don't know what kind of support they have with the team. Chances are, if they're a celebrity, they probably have some sort of private chef. They're not even making decisions. They don't experience the decision fatigue that you might around food. They're not meal prepping it themselves. And so there's a lot of other factors in which it seems on its face easier for them to stick to something, even if that something isn't necessarily that extreme. Let's be clear, there's just less friction for that person who is not objectively the average person to execute some of those things in a way that, it doesn't feel that hard for them because they're not managing half of the things that you're managing. So all that to say, I then said to ChatGPT, all right, I'm with it. So based on number 5, which was the comment about, marketing from influencers and celebrities, do you think people are promoting these diet trends, or are they promoting the first 3 tips? So I really wanted to know, like, hey, ChatGPT, the first 3 tips you gave me, the walking, the strength training, and the protein intake, I like that. And I love that those were your first 3 tips that you led with. Granted, I kind of probed it to lead with that because of the specific question that I asked by highlighting nutrition coaches. But I just really wanted to know, like, kind of like what's kind of going on in the mind behind ChatGPT and like how it's actually programmed. And so here's what it did say that, again, is leading me to have a more excited outlook about all of this and feel like all this is really promising. You're absolutely right to consider the distinction between what's being promoted in the fitness and nutrition space from some of these celebrities and influencers versus a nutrition coach. While there are certainly a lot of influencers and celebrities pushing fad diets or extreme workout trends, I do think there is a noticeable shift. This is ChatGPT writing this to me. I do think there's a noticeable shift towards promoting more sustainable, balanced approaches like the first 3 tips of walking, strength training, mindful nutrition. Here's why I think we're seeing more of these long-term strategies. There's a growing awareness of health risks as the dangers of fad diets like nutritional deficiencies, muscle loss, or slowed metabolism become more widely known. Coaches are increasingly advocating for healthier, more sustainable methods. Hell yeah. More fitness professionals are embracing the ideas that fitness should be a lifestyle, not just a temporary phase. 100%. There's a growing recognition. This is what's good. A growing recognition that small, consistent habits are more effective than extreme approaches. Growing recognition. So if you're out there and you're still trying to tell me that you need to do something that does not involve small, sustainable approach with tiny habits that you can stack on consistently, you're doing it wrong. You're not doing it like everybody else is. 2, social media shift towards realness. That's kind of what I was getting at and just making the comparison. If you're looking for relatable and you're looking for real, you want to look for people like me who are just showing up as my full self online, and that's becoming more and more popular, and we love to see it. ChatGPT says it this way: the before and after narratives are evolving to include stories about long-term sustainability rather than just rapid weight loss. Fitness professionals are pushing more science-backed advice. Nutritionist trainers, some influencers are increasingly aware that audience values credible information. Instead of promoting the next miracle product or diet, they're sharing tips based on proven science. These tips, like building muscle, walking regularly, eating enough protein, align more with what works in the long run, and people seem to appreciate the practicality of that advice. Love it. And more lifestyle influencers are shifting their focus. There's a growing trend among influencers to focus on holistic health, mental well-being, stress management, and balance, rather than just getting a beach body. This can involve encouraging people to find sustainable forms of exercise like walking or yoga, and build meals around nutritious foods that fuel the body instead of focusing on cutting out entire food groups, like we've definitely seen in the past. So yes, are there always going to be the quote unquote bad apples out there? There are in every single industry. I could say that about literally any other topic. Obviously, this is where we relate it all back to nutrition. So I'm going to leave it at that. But ChatGPT even asked me, do I think I've noticed this shift in the type of fitness advice and what's trending? And as I've been saying for like the last 45 minutes, yes, I do believe so. But I also wonder if, because of my own beliefs and therefore my own bias, I am then choosing to see mostly that type of content because I have total autonomy over who I follow. And that's something I want you to take with you today. That's something I want you to consider with your own autonomy online. Remember that your approach to fitness and nutrition isn't just about what you're eating. It's about the thoughts you have. It's about who you're listening to that are informing some of those thoughts, that are informing those opinions and those beliefs. And if you're in the state of like, man, I need to kick it into high gear to get ready for summer, I promise you're not surrounding yourself, whether that's like physically in person or virtually in your online space, by the right pieces of advice and the right kind of people. But what I do also want to acknowledge is that if you're finding yourself in this feedback loop for yet another March, April season, where you're like, this was the year that I said it would be different. This was the year that I was going to focus on this. This was the year that I was actually going to prioritize myself, and you haven't yet, you're the only person that's getting in your way. That's why I started this episode the way that I did. Recently, by the time this episode airs, we'll be 2 weeks into it, we launched a program inside of the Fitness Fix called the Forever Formula. It's a 6-week challenge, but make no mistake. When we launched it, we said, this is a 6-week foundational challenge to give you a taste, just a little bit of a flavor of everything that we do inside of the Fitness Fix that most of our clients implement with our support on more of like an 18 to 24 plus month basis to really see sustainable progress. The clients that we choose between Alyssa and myself to highlight on Instagram with their progress, when we're saying that they're down 20 plus pounds, 30 plus pounds, if not more, it's over a 2.5 to 3 year window. We're not talking about 6 months. We're not even talking about 1 year. And I stand by continuing to promote that type of approach, because something that I've realized in putting together our Forever Formula Challenge, in thinking about the different ways that we will continue to support other women and our Fitness Fix community, is we're not a fat loss program. Yes, we help our clients achieve fat loss. But if you really wanted to know what we are, if I had to put a, fitness label on it, so to speak, a health label on it, so to speak, we're a maintenance program. And we're not a maintenance program in the sense that we only help people who are already in maintenance. We're the program that actually helps you get to maintenance. Because as I said at the beginning, for everyone who puts fat loss and like the calorie deficit phase on a pedestal, what you should really be putting on a pedestal is the maintenance phase, because that's the space where you get to live the life that you want to live, that you've been chasing through your pursuit of every round of the next 10 pounds that you lose. you're looking to get to that other side. There is nothing more gratifying to me than when I have a client who initially joins us and is like, yeah, I really want to get to a place that I don't want to track my food anymore. If you want that, I'll support you to get there. I love the concept of intuitive eating when done correctly, but it's really exciting when I have a client who then says a year later, I can't see a world in which I don't track my food, because that's what's working for them. And it also shows me that we have taught it to them in a way that feels natural. And for those of it, we still have clients out there who want nothing to do with it. And that's okay too. We have clients out there who are like, this is not for me for long term. I'll do it to get to a certain result. But I always caution them. That's fine. And I want that for you. But then you have to sign up for working with me while you're choosing the other approach that does not involve the tracking, because I want to teach you the approach that doesn't involve tracking with structure too. Because if it were as simple as you just kind of going with the flow and eating how you feel, then you wouldn't be in a situation where you're raising your hand looking for a nutrition coach in the first place, right? So think of the Fitness Fix as the maintenance program, knowing that we're going to get you to maintenance and we are going to keep you in maintenance. And when it comes to AI, I like to think that we're only just beginning on all of the possibility of what it can do to make things not only faster for us, but for all of you out there who I know are just as busy and feeling like you're moving in a million different directions. If there are tools that can reduce friction in your life, this being one of them, you bet your ass I'm going to be the first person to tell you about it. So with that, stay tuned for another episode coming next week. And from wherever you guys are listening from, as always, I say this every single week. Yes, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Yes, I so appreciate you for being here. But seriously, it means the world. You guys are amazing. I don't ask this often enough, but in an effort to continue to promote this show and keep it going well past year 5, please make sure you are following the show. I recently went to a training where there were conversations about different ways to grow your podcast. And one of the tips was, instead of asking for reviews, instead of asking for likes, just to remind people to make sure that you're actually following. And if you do share this podcast with anybody, I would just please ask that you tell them the same. Give the episode a follow. Hopefully they make it all the way to the end and hear this from me directly, but give us a follow. It means the world. It's so much fun to do this every single week. And even if only 2 people listened, I would still do it because it just selfishly brings me a lot of joy. But I love hearing from all of you. I love when you send me a message and tell me exactly what you enjoyed from the episode. So keep doing it because it makes my week. And with that, I will see you guys next week. Thanks.